Now let's start with the Linux boot process. So in this lecture, we will learn what is BIOS, and we'll discuss about it, the MPR, the grub, the kernel, the init, the run level programs. Okay, now let's start with the BIOS. So the BIOS stands for Basic Input Output System. In simple terms, the BIOS loads and executes the master boot record, which is the MBR, the bootloader. Okay, so when you first turn on your computer, the BIOS first performs some integrity checks of the HDD, the hard disk drive, or SSD, the solid state drive. Okay, so then the BIOS searches for, loads, and executes the bootloader program, which can be found in the master boot record, which is the MBR. The MBR is sometimes on a USB stick or CD-ROM, such as with a live installation of Linux. Once the bootloader program is detected, it is then loaded into the memory, and the BIOS gives control of the system to it. Now for the MBR, MBR stands for Master Boot Record and is responsible for loading and executing the grub bootloader. So the MBR is located actually in the first sector of the bootable disk, which is typically div HDA or div SDA, depending on your hardware. The MBR also contains information about grub or Lilo in very old systems. The grub, sometimes called GNU grub, which is a short for GNU Grand Unified Bootloader, is the typical bootloader for the most modern Linux systems. The grub splash screen is often the first thing you see when you boot your computer. It has simple menu where you can select some options. If you have multiple kernel images installed, you can use your keyboard to select the one you want your system to boot with. By default, the latest kernel image is selected. The splash screen will wait a few seconds for you to select an option. If you don't, it will load the default kernel image. So in many systems, you can find the grub configuration file at the boot grub.conf or etc grub.conf. So here is an example of the grub.conf file. So it will has these followings, okay, in a single file actually. Okay, so you can see that the boot is div SDA, default 0, timeout 5, splash image, etc, hidden menu, title, CentOS, root, kernel, etc. Okay, this is just an example of the grub.conf. Okay, now the kernel. The kernel is often referred to as the core of any operating system, Linux included. It has complete control over everything in your system. In this stage of the boot process, the kernel that was selected by the grub first mounts the root file system that's specified in the grub.conf file. Then it executes the sbin init program, which is always the first program to be executed. You can confirm this with the process ID, which should always be 1. Okay, so check it out. You will see that the init is 1. The kernel then establishes a temporary root file system using initial RAM disk init.rd until the real file system is mounted. The init. So at this point, your system executes run level programs. At one point, it would look for an init file, usually found at etc init tab, to decide the Linux run level. So modern Linux systems use systemd to choose a run level instead. So we have run level 0, which is matched by power off the target, and run level 0.target is a symbolic link to the power off the target. We have the run level 1, which is matched to rescue the target. All right. We have run level 3. It is emulated by multi-user target. Run level 5 is emulated by graphical target. Run level 6 is emulated by reboot target. And systemd will then begin executing run level programs. All right, which is the run level programs. So depending on which system distribution you have installed, you may see different services getting started. For example, you might catch starting send email. Okay, these are known as run level programs and are executed from a different directories depending on your run level. Each of the 6 run levels described above has its own directory. So we have run level 0, etc rc0d, run level 1, run level 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, and you can find them in the etc rc123.d, etc, etc. Note that the exact location of these directories varies from distribution to distribution. If you look in the different level directories, you will find programs that start with either an S, capital A, K, capital for startup, and kill respectively. Startup programs are executed during system startup and kill programs during shutdowns. Okay, so far so good. Thanks for watching.